After his parents' visit, Mark found himself thinking more and more about Lisa. He missed her deeply, and though they spoke every day, it wasn't the same as being together. Mark realized that it had been a while since they had seen each other in person, and the longing to be with his wife grew stronger by the day. After considering his options, he decided that it was time to visit Lisa in Canada. As the boss of his own company, Mark knew he could manage his time and responsibilities in a way that would allow him to travel. The company had grown significantly, thanks in large part to the connection Lisa had helped him establish. With more clients coming in and business thriving, Mark had hired additional staffs to handle the increasing workload. He had built a capable team that he could rely on even in his absence. One evening, after finishing up some work at the office, Mark called Lisa to share his decision. "Lisa," he said, his voice filled with excitement, "I've been thinking, I want to come and visit you in Canada. It's been too long since we were last together, and I miss you so much." Lisa's heart skipped a beat when she heard the news. She had been longing to see Mark too, and the thought of him coming to Canada filled her with joy. "Oh, Mark, that's wonderful news," she exclaimed. "I can't wait to see you. I will help you with all the travel documents to make sure everything goes smoothly." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He knew that with Lisa's help, the process would be much easier and faster. "Thank you, Lisa. I'll start making the necessary arrangements on my end as well. I want everything to be in order before I leave." With that, Mark began preparing for his trip. He made sure the company was in good hands, delegating tasks to his trusted team members and setting up a system for them to report to him daily through Zoom. He knew that leaving the business for a while was a big step, but he was confident that his employees could handle it. Lisa, on her part, wasted no time in assisting Mark with the travel documents. She contacted the necessary offices, pulled a few strings, and ensured that everything was processed quickly. Within a short time, Mark's passport, visa, and other travel documents were ready. She even helped him book his flight, choosing a weekend departure so they could have so much time together as possible. As the day of his departure approached, Mark couldn't help but feel a growing sense of excitement. He was finally going to see his wife, to hold her tight in his arms again. He had missed her warmth, her laughter, and the way she always knew how to make him feel at ease. The thought of spending time with Lisa without the pressure of work or other distractions filled him with anticipation. Lisa, too, was counting down on the days until Mark's arrival. She had taken some leave from work, wanting to spend quality time with her husband. She made plans for their time together, thinking of all the places they could visit and the memories they would create. Just the thought of Mark being with her soon made her heart race with excitement. Finally, the weekend arrived. Mark woke up early that morning, his bags packed and ready by the door. He took one last look around his house, making sure everything was in place. Then, with a deep breath, he grabbed his luggage and headed to the airport. The drive was smooth, and before he knew it, Mark was checking in for his flight. As he went through the security and made his way to the gate, a mixture of excitement and nervousness settled in his heart. When Mark finally boarded the plane, he settled into his seat and took a deep breath. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. In a few hours, he would be reunited with the love of his life. As the plane took off, Mark closed his eyes and imagined the moment he would see Lisa again. The moment they would embrace after being apart for so long. Lisa, on the other hand, was at the apartment in Canada, eagerly awaiting Mark's arrival. She had made sure everything was perfect for him. His favorite meals were prepared. The apartment was spotless, and she had even planned a special welcome for him. Every time she glanced at the clock, her excitement grew. She knew that in just a few hours, Mark would be with her again, and the thought filled her with overwhelming happiness. Back on the plane, Mark looked out of the window as the cloud drifted by. He couldn't wait to land, to see Lisa's smiling face waiting for him at the airport. He could already picture her running towards him, arms stretched, and the feelings of holding her close again for so long. The hours seemed to drag on, but finally, the pilot announced that they were beginning their descent into Canada. Mark's heart started to race. He was almost there. As the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, he gathered his things and prepared to disembark. The moment the doors opened, he quickly made his way through customs and baggage claim, his eyes scanning the crowd for Lisa. And then he saw her standing there, just as beautiful as he remembered. With a smile that lit up the entire room, Lisa waved excitedly, and Mark's heart soared. He quickly made his way over to her, and without a word, they wrapped their arms around each other in a tight embrace. It felt like coming home. Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes as she held Mark close, feeling the warmth and strength of his embrace. "I've missed you so much," she whispered, her voice choked with emotions. Mark pulled back slightly, just enough to look into her eyes. "I've missed you too, Lisa, more than words can say." They stood there for a few moments, just holding each other, soaking in the reality of being together again. Finally, Lisa pulled back and smiled up at Mark. "Come on, let's get home. We have so much to catch up on." As they left the airport and headed to Lisa's apartment, Mark felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over him. He was finally where he belonged, by Lisa's side. When Mark arrived at Lisa's apartment in Canada, he was taken aback by how beautiful and cozy the place was. Everything was neat and tidy, just like Lisa herself. Thoughtful and meticulous, Mark smiled as he noticed the little touches she had added to make the place feel like home. Even in a foreign land, it was clear to him that Lisa had put in a lot of effort to create a comfortable environment for both of them. As soon as they walked in, Lisa led Mark to the living room, where a table was already set with food and snacks she had prepared just for him. The aroma of freshly cooked meals filled the air, making Mark's mouth water. It's been a long journey, and he was eager to enjoy a homemade meal. "Why don't you take a shower first and freshen up?" Lisa suggested with a smile, knowing that Mark must be exhausted from the flight. "Then you can come and eat." Mark nodded in agreement, grateful for her thoughtfulness. He quickly made his way to the bathroom. After his shower, Mark changed into some comfortable clothes and joined Lisa at the dining table. The sight of the food made him smile. Everything looked delicious. Lisa had prepared some of his favorite dishes, and Mark couldn't wait to dig in. They sat down together, and as Mark began to eat, he couldn't help but express his gratitude. "This is amazing, Lisa," Mark said between bites. "You really went all out. Thank you so much." Lisa blushed slightly, pleased that Mark was enjoying the meal. "I'm just happy you're here," she replied softly. "I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for you." After the meal, Mark surprised Lisa with a gift he had brought all the way from Nigeria. He handed her a beautifully wrapped box, and Lisa's eyes lit up with excitement as she carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like a heart. It was simple yet elegant, and Lisa loved it immediately. "Oh, Mark, it's beautiful," Lisa exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you so much." Mark smiled warmly as he watched her put on the necklace. "I'm glad you like it, Lisa. It is a small token of my love for you." They spent the rest of the day in each other's arms, savoring every moment of their time together. It felt as if the outside world had disappeared, leaving just the two of them in their own little bubble of happiness. They talked, laughed, and reminisced about the journey that had brought them to this point in their lives. The love between them was palpable, and they cherished the time they had together. The next day, Lisa decided to show Mark around Canada. She took him to some of the most amazing spots in the country, eager to share the beauty of her new home with him. They visited parks with breathtaking views, explored bustling city streets, and even went on a few adventures that Mark had never experienced before. The days flew by in a whirlwind of joy and excitement. Lisa and Mark were having the time of their lives, completely immersed in each other's company. It felt like nothing else mattered as long as they were together. The lovebirds explored every corner of the city, trying new things and deepening their bond with each passing day. But as the days turned into weeks, reality began to creep back in. Mark knew that his time in Canada was coming to an end, and although he wished he could stay longer, he also knew that his responsibilities awaited him back in Nigeria. The business they had worked so hard to build needed his attention, and he couldn't neglect it. One evening, after a fun-filled day of sightseeing, Mark gently brought up the subject to Lisa. "Lisa, my love," he began, his tone serious yet gentle. "It's been an incredible month, and I've loved every minute of it. But I think it's time for me to start thinking about heading back to Nigeria. The business needs me, and I can't leave it unattended for too long." Lisa's heart sank at the thought of Mark leaving. She had gotten so used to having him around, to waking up next to him every morning, and to sharing every moment of her day with him. The idea of being apart again filled her with sadness. She looked at Mark with pleading eyes. "Can't you stay a little longer? Just few more days." Mark reached out and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I wish I could, Lisa. Believe me, I don't want to leave you, but we have responsibilities back home. The business is doing well, but it still needs careful attention. I promise I'll come back soon and we'll see each other more often. We'll make this work." Lisa knew deep down that Mark was right, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. She nodded slowly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I understand, but please promise me that you will come back as soon as you can." Mark pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her close. "I promise, Lisa. I'll be back before you know it, and we'll keep in touch every day, just like we always do." Lisa buried her face in Mark's chest, taking comfort in his warmth and the sound of his heartbeat. She knew that they would make it through this, just like they had made it through everything else. Their love was strong, and nothing could keep them apart for long. Over the next few days, they made the most of their reminiscing time together. They visited a few more places, shared more laughs, and created even more memories. But as the day of Mark's departure drew closer, Lisa couldn't help but feel a sense of impending loss. Finally, the day arrived. Mark packed his bags, and Lisa helped him get everything ready for his flight. They drove to the airport in silence, both of them lost in their thoughts. When they arrived, Mark checked in, and they sat together in the waiting area, holding hands and savoring the last moments they had. When Mark's flight was called, they stood up and faced each other. Lisa's eyes were filled with tears, and Mark gently wiped them away. "I'll see you soon, Lisa," he said smoothly. "I love you." "I love you too, Mark," Lisa replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Take care of yourself." They hugged one last time, holding on to each other as if they never wanted to let go. Finally, Mark pulled away, giving Lisa a reassuring smile. "I'll call you as soon as I land." Lisa nodded, unable to speak. She watched as Mark walked away, her heart aching with every step he took. When he reached the gate, he turned and waved one last time before disappearing from sight. Lisa stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where Mark had just been. Then she turned and slowly made her way back to the car. After his visit to Canada, Mark safely landed back in Nigeria. The journey had been smooth, and as soon as he reached his home, he wasted no time in calling Lisa to let her know that he has arrived safely. He had promised her that he would call as soon as he touched down, and he kept his words. Lisa was overjoyed to hear from him. She had been anxiously waiting for his call, wondering how his flight had gone. When Mark's voice came through the phone, she felt a wave of relief and happiness wash over her. They spent some time on the phone, talking about his journey and how much they missed each other already. But eventually, they had to hang up, both knowing they needed to get back to their daily routines. In the week that followed, life slowly returned to normal for both Mark and Lisa. Mark threw himself back into his work at their accounting firm in Nigeria. He had a lot to catch up on after his month-long stay in Canada. and there were many tasks waiting for his attention. But Mark was efficient and focused, and with the help of his capable team, he quickly got back on track. Lisa, on the other hand, returned to her job in Canada. She too had missed a lot while Mark was visiting, and there was plenty of works waiting for her at the office. But Lisa was dedicated and hardworking, and she soon caught up with everything she had missed. Even though she was back at work, Lisa found herself thinking about Mark often. She missed having him around, but she kept herself busy, knowing that they would be together again soon. However, about 2 weeks after Mark's departure, Lisa began to feel unwell. At first, she thought it was just exhaustion from the busy weeks that followed Mark's visit. She had been working hard and perhaps hadn't been taking care of herself as well as she should have. But as the days went on, Lisa's discomfort grew. She felt unusually tired that she couldn't explain. Realizing that something might be wrong, Lisa decided to take a sick leave from work so she could rest and figure out what was going on with her health. She didn't want to take any chances, especially since she was far away from home and didn't have Mark by her side. Lisa made an appointment at the hospital to get herself checked out. She hoped it was nothing serious, but she knew it was better to be safe than sorry. When she arrived at the hospital, the doctor asked her a series of questions about her symptoms and ran a few tests to find out what was going on. After a short wait, the doctor returned with the results. She smiled warmly at Lisa and said, "Congratulations, Lisa, you are pregnant." Lisa was stunned for a moment, unsure if she had heard the doctor correctly. "Pregnant," she repeated, her voice filled with disbelief and excitement. "Yes," the doctor confirmed with a nod. "You are going to have a baby." A wave of joy and excitement washed over Lisa as the news finally sank in. She was going to be a mother. She couldn't believe it. Tears of happiness filled her eyes as she thanked the doctor for the good news. Lisa's mind was racing with thoughts about the future, about how she and Mark would prepare for the baby, how their lives would change, and how much she already loved the little life growing inside her. As soon as she left the hospital, Lisa couldn't wait to share the good news with Mark. She grabbed her phone and quickly dialed his number. Mark answered almost immediately, and Lisa could hear the eagerness in his voice. "Hi, my love," Mark said warmly. "How are you feeling?" Lisa could barely contain her excitement. "Mark, I have some incredible news," she exclaimed. "What is it?" Mark asked, his tone filled with curiosity and a hint of concern. "I'm pregnant," Lisa announced, her voice trembling with joy. There was a brief moment of silence on the other end of the line as Mark processed the news. Then his voice burst with excitement. "Lisa, that's amazing. I can't believe it. We're going to be parents." "Yes, we are, my love," Lisa said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm so happy, Mark. I can't wait to start this journey with you." Mark could hardly contain his joy. He felt an overwhelming sense of pride and happiness, knowing that he was going to be a father. "Lisa, I'm so happy too," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I wish I could be there with you right now, but don't worry, I'll make sure you are taken care of. I'll be there for you and our baby every step of the way." Lisa smiled through her tears, feeling comforted by Mark's words. "I know you will, Mark. You are already an amazing husband, and I know you will be an incredible father." They spent a few more minutes on the phone, talking about the baby and all the preparations they would need to make. Mark reassured Lisa that he would support her in any way he could, even from a distance. They both knew that this was a new chapter in their lives, and they were ready to face it together, no matter the challenges. After they hung up, Mark couldn't stop smiling. The news of Lisa's pregnancy had filled him with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. He was going to do everything in his power to make sure Lisa and their baby were taken care of. Mark began making plans to visit Lisa in Canada as soon as possible. He wanted to be there for her during the pregnancy, to support her and to bond with their unborn child. He knew that he would need to make sure everything was in order at the accounting firm before he could leave again, but he was determined to make it happen. In the meantime, Lisa focused on taking care of herself and the little life growing inside her. She knew that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, and she couldn't wait to share every moment of it with Mark. The future was full of promise, and Lisa and Mark were ready to embrace it with open arms. 2 months had passed, and Mark was filled with anticipation as he concluded his preparation to travel to Canada. He had been looking forward to this trip for weeks, eager to be by Lisa's side as they navigated the exciting new chapter of their lives. The thought of seeing Lisa again, of holding her in his arms, brought a smile on his face as he finished packing his bags. He knew that this trip was important, not just for him, but for their growing family. On the day of his departure, Mark booked a taxi to take him to the airport. It was a bright and sunny day, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. As the taxi made its way through the bustling streets of the city, Mark decided to give Lisa a call to update her on his movements. He knew she would be anxious to know that he was on his way, and he couldn't wait to hear her voice. "Hi, love," Mark said as soon as she picked up the phone. "I'm on my way to the airport now. I should be there soon." Lisa's voice was filled with excitement on the other end of the line. "That's great, Mark. I can't wait to see you. How is the journey so far?" Mark smiled as he continued to chat with his wife. They talked about the upcoming trip, about how excited they both were to be together again. Mark felt a warm sense of contentment as he listened to Lisa's voice, imagining how wonderful it would be to see her face to face in just a few hours. But suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a loud jarring noise. Mark's heart skipped a beat as he felt the taxi launch violently to one side. He barely had time to react before the world around him seemed to explode into chaos. The taxi he was in had collided with a moving truck, and the impact was so powerful that it sent the car spinning out of control. On the other end of the phone, Lisa's heart stopped when she heard the noise. "Mark! Mark! What is happening?" she called out, her voice filled with panic, but there were no response. All she could hear was sounds of chaos, of people shouting, of cars honking, and of all the terrible crunching of metal. Lisa's blood ran cold as she realized that something terrible had happened. "Mark, please say something," Lisa cried out, but the line went silent. Fear gripped her heart as she called out to him again and again, but there was no answer. Instead, she could hear the faint voice of people in the background, speaking words of sympathy and concern. It was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Desperately, Lisa hung up and tried calling Mark's number again. This time, a stranger's voice answered the phone. "Hello, who is this?" the person asked. "This is Mark's wife, Lisa," she said, her voice trembling. "What happened? Is my husband okay?" The stranger hesitated for a moment before answering. "There's been an accident. The taxi your husband was in collided with a truck. It was a bad crash. He's been taken to the hospital." Lisa felt the ground drop out from beneath her as the word sank in. An accident? A bad crash? The world around her seemed to blur as panic and fear took hold of her. "Which hospital?" she asked urgently. "Please tell me where he is." The stranger gave her the name and address of the hospital where Mark had been taken. As soon as Lisa had the information, she felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. She had to get to Nigeria. She had to be with Mark. Without wasting another moment, Lisa called her office to inform them of what had happened. She explained the situation, her voice shaky with emotion, and told them that she needed to take an emergency leave. Her colleagues were understanding, quickly offering their support and helping her arrange an emergency flight back to Nigeria. Lisa knew she couldn't stay in Canada when her husband's life was in danger. She had to be by his side no matter what. Lisa's journey to the airport was a blur. Her mind was consumed with worry and fear as she thought about Mark and what he might be going through. She prayed fervently, asking God to protect her husband, to keep him safe, to help him recover from whatever injuries he might have sustained. The thought of losing Mark was too much to bear, and Lisa couldn't stop the tears from falling as she boarded the plane. The flight to Nigeria seemed to take forever. Every minute felt like an eternity, and Lisa anxiously waited to land. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything but pray and hope that Mark was still alive, that he would be okay. Her heart ached with fear and uncertainty, and all she wanted was to be by Mark's side, to hold his hand and tell him everything would be okay. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the plane touched down in Nigeria. Lisa quickly gathered her things and rushed off the plane, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a taxi home to drop off her luggage, not knowing how long she might need to stay in the hospital. She couldn't focus on anything but getting to Mark as quickly as possible. As soon as she arrived home, Lisa called Mark's phone again. A nurse answered this time, and Lisa quickly explained who she was. The nurse gave her the address of the clinic where Mark had been taken, and Lisa immediately rushed out of the house to go there. When Lisa arrived at the clinic, she saw Mark's parents in the waiting area. Relief washed over her as she realized she had found the right place. She quickly approached them, her heart pounding with fear and concern. "Good afternoon," she greeted them, trying to keep her voice steady. But instead of offering comfort and reassurance, Mark's parents looked at her with scorn and disdain. Their eyes were cold, their expressions hard, and Lisa could feel the hostility radiating from them. It was as if they blamed her for what had happened to Mark. Lisa was taken aback by their reaction. She had expected them to be worried, to be anxious, to be grateful that she was there to support their son, but instead, she felt a wall of coldness between them, a sense of resentment that she couldn't understand. She tried to offer a small smile, hoping to ease the tension, but it was no use. Mark's parents clearly wanted nothing to do with her. Feeling hurt and confused, Lisa stepped back and found a quiet corner to stand in. She didn't know what to say or do. All she could do was wait, her heart heavy with worry, hoping and praying that Mark would be okay. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity as they waited for the doctor to come out with news. The minutes felt like hours as Lisa and Mark's parents waited anxiously in the hospital hallway. The tension in the air was thick, with worry etched on everyone's faces. The only sound was the distant horn of hospital equipment and the occasional footstep of doctors and nurses hurrying by. Lisa's heart was pounding in her chest, every beat filled with dread and hope. She prayed silently, asking for a miracle for Mark to be okay. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the doctor emerged from Mark's room. He looked serious, his expression calm but grave. Lisa and Mark's parents immediately rushed towards him, their anxiety bubbling over as they bombarded him with questions. "How is my son, doctor?" Mark's mother asked, her voice trembling with fear. "Will he be alright?" Mark's father added, his eyes wide with concern. The doctor took a deep breath before responding, his voice gentle yet firm. "Mark is in coma," he explained. "His injuries were severe and his body needs time to heal. It's impossible to say exactly when he will wake up, but we are doing everything we can to help him recover." A wave of sadness washed over Lisa as the doctor's words sank in. Mark was in a coma. Her beloved husband was lying unconscious, unable to speak or move. Tears welled up in her eyes as she imagined the pain and struggle he must have gone through. All she wanted was to be by his side, to hold his hand and tell him that everything would be alright. Can I see him? Lisa asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor nodded. Yes, you can see him, but please be gentle. He needs rest and a calm environment to recover. Lisa felt a small sense of relief, knowing that she could be with Mark, even if he wasn't awake to see her. She was about to turn and go into the room when suddenly Mark's parents rushed ahead of her. They pushed past Lisa, hurrying into the room as if they couldn't bear to wait another second. Lisa was taken aback by their sudden urgency, but she quickly followed them inside, her heart heavy with worry. Inside the room, Lisa saw Mark lying motionless on the hospital bed. His face was pale and his eyes were closed as if he were sleeping. The machines around him beeped softly, monitoring his vital signs. It was a heartbreaking sight, and Lisa felt a tear slip down her cheek as she approached the bed. Mark, Lisa whispered, her voice trembling with emotions. She gently took his hand in hers, feeling its warmth despite its unconscious state. I'm here, my love. I'm here with you. Lisa leaned down, placing her head on Mark's chest. She could hear the faint sound of his heartbeat, and it filled her with both sadness and hope. She began to whisper sweet words to him, telling him how much she loved him, how she believed he would get better, how she would be there for him every step of the way. She poured her heart out, hoping that somehow her words would reach him, that he would know she was there. But as Lisa continued to speak, Mark's mother suddenly let out an irritated huff. Her face twisted in anger as she glared at Lisa. Enough of this charade, she burst out, her voice sharp and accusing. Stop pretending, Lisa. You only came back to Nigeria because you heard about Mark's accident. You thought he was dead, didn't you? You thought you could swoop in and inherit everything he worked for. But you are wrong. You won't get a single dime from us. Lisa was stunned by the harshness of Mark's mother's words. She opened her mouth to protest, to explain that she had only come back because she loved Mark and wanted to be with him. But before she could say anything, Mark's father joined in, his voice filled with contempt. After you finish your work in Canada, he sneered, you think you can come back here and take what doesn't belong to you? You think you can just walk in and reap benefits of our son's hard work? It will never happen. Lisa, never! Lisa's heart shattered as she listened to Mark's parents' accusation. She had always known that they didn't fully accept her, but she had never imagined they would think a little of her, especially at a time like this. She couldn't believe that they would accuse her of such terrible things, that they would think she was only here for money and not out of love for Mark. Overwhelmed with frustration and pain, Lisa let out a loud anguish cry. She felt powerless, unable to convince Mark's parents of her sincerity, unable to make them understand how much she loved their son. Desperate and heartbroken, she began shaking Mark and tears falling onto his still body. Mark, please wake up, she cried, her voice filled with desperation. Please don't leave me, I need you. The commotion quickly drew the attention of the nurses. They rushed into the room, alarmed by the noise and the sight of Lisa shaking Mike despite the machines hooked up to him. Realizing that this was a deeply personal family matter, the nurses gently and firmly asked everyone to leave the room so that Mark could rest. Reluctantly, Lisa let go of Mark's hand and stepped back, her heart aching as she watched the nurses usher them out of the room. She wanted to stay, to be with her husband, but she knew that they had no choice but to give him the space he needed to recover. As they were led out of the room, Lisa cast one last tearful glance at Mark, praying silently for a miracle. As Lisa and Mark's parents stepped outside the hospital room, the tension only grew. Mark's parents were relentless, their words sharp and filled with anger. They continued to lash out at Lisa, accusing her of all sorts of things, their voices rising with every word. You think you can come here and fool us? Mark's mother spat, her eyes narrowing as she glared at Lisa. You are just waiting for him to die so you can take everything. Mark's father joined in, his voice cold and harsh. You never cared about this family, Lisa. You abandoned him to run off to Canada, and now you came back pretending to care. We see right through you. Lisa stood there, silent, taking in every word they hurled at her. She felt the sting of their accusation, each one hitting her like a blow, but she refused to leave. She had made up her mind. She would not abandon Mark. She would stay by his side, no matter what his parents said or did. Her love for him was stronger than their anger, stronger than their hate. After what felt like an eternity, Mark's parents finally left the hospital, their words still ringing in Lisa's ears. But she did not follow them. She couldn't. All she could think about was Mark, lying in that hospital bed, fighting for his life. She resolved to stay with him, to be there for him when he woke up, no matter how long it took. 2 days passed, and Lisa remained at the hospital, praying for a miracle. She barely ate, barely slept, her thoughts consumed by worry for her husband. She kept vigil by his side, holding his hand, talking to him softly, hoping that somehow he could hear her and find the strength to come back to her. Then, on the third day, the miracle she had been praying for finally happened. The doctor came to Lisa with a small reassuring smile on his face. Mark is out of danger, he said gently. Lisa's heart skipped a beat, and without a second thought, she ran to Mark's side. She burst into the room, her eyes wide with relief and joy. There he was, her beloved Mark, awake and alive. She didn't care about anything else in that moment. She just needed to hold him. Mark, she cried out, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. She didn't even notice the pain it might have caused him. All that mattered was that he was alive, that he was awake. Mark winced slightly from the pain. His body still weak from the ordeal, but when he saw Lisa's face, his heart swelled with happiness. He managed a weak smile, his eyes meeting hers with all the love he could muster. I'm so glad you are here, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Lisa tried to kiss him, wanting to show him just how much she had missed him, how much she loved him, but just as their lips were about to meet, the door to the room burst open. Mark's parents stormed in, their faces twisted with anger. They had caught Lisa in the act of kissing their son, and it was too much for them to bear. Mark's mother rushed over to Lisa, grabbing her arms and dragging her away from the bed. Get away from him, she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. You have no right to be here. Leave this room immediately. Lisa was too shocked to respond. She couldn't believe what was happening. She had just been reunited with her husband, and now his mother was trying to tear them apart again. But before she could say anything, Mark, still in pain but determined, spoke up. Mom, Dad, stop. Mark's voice was weak but firm. Lisa is my wife, and she stays with me. If you can't accept that, then you should leave. His parents were stunned into silence. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Their son, lying there, barely able to move, was defending Lisa. The very woman they had spent days accusing. The woman they had tried hard to push away. They tried to argue, to protest, taking advantage of Mark's weak state. But before they could say much more, the nurse on duty entered the room, having heard the commotion. Excuse me, the nurse said, her tone professional but stern. If the patient has asked you to leave, I must insist that you respect his wishes. He needs rest, and this kind of stress is not helping him recover. Mark's parents were humiliated. They exchanged a glance, realizing they had no choice but to leave. With a final disdainful look at Lisa, they turned and walked out of the room, their pride bruised but their resentment still burning. As soon as they were gone, Lisa rushed back to Mark's side, her heart aching from the ordeal. She held his hand close to her chest, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his pulse. Tears filled her eyes. but this time they were tears of relief, tears of love. I'm here, Mark, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I'm not going anywhere. Mark smiled weakly, squeezing her hand tightly as he could. I love you, Lisa, he said softly. I love you too, Mark, Lisa replied, leaning to kiss his forehead gently. And I'm not going to let anyone come between us. 2 weeks after the tense encounter in the hospital, Mark was finally discharged. His body was still weak, but his spirit was strong. He was ready to go home, to the life he had with Lisa. As the nurse wheeled him out of the hospital, Lisa walked beside him, her heart filled with relief. They had been through so much, but they had made it through together. Once outside, they booked a boat to take them home. The ride was quiet, but it was a peaceful silence. Mark held Lisa's hand, squeezing it gently as the car moved through the city streets. Lisa looked at him and smiled, her heart swelling with love. She had been so worried, but now she felt that everything would be okay. When they arrived home, Mark was filled with a deep sense of gratitude. He was happy to be back, to be in the place where he had shared so many memories with Lisa. As they stepped into the house, Mark looked around, taking in the familiar sights and smells. It felt good to be home again, surrounded by the things he loved. Mark noticed how tired Lisa looked. Her face was drawn with stress, and her movements were slower than usual. He knew she had been through a lot, and now that she was carrying their child, she needed to rest. Lisa, you've been amazing, Mark said, his voice full of admiration. But you need to take care of yourself and our baby. Go and rest for a while. Lisa realized how exhausted she was. She had been running on pure willpower, not taking the time to rest or relax. She nodded, knowing that Mark was right. She kissed him softly on the cheek and headed to the bedroom to lie down. But her rest was short-lived. Not long after she had settled in, she was startled by a loud noise coming from the living room. Her heart raced as she got up to see what was happening. When she entered the living room, she found Mark's parents standing there, their faces twisted in anger. They were yelling at Mark, accusing him of choosing Lisa, whom they called a gold digger, over his own family. Their voices were loud and filled with bitterness. Mark sat quietly as they spoke, letting them vent their frustrations. When they finally paused, he spoke calmly but firmly. Mom, Dad, I need you to listen to me, Mark began, his voice steady. You've got it all wrong. Lisa isn't a gold digger. If anything, I'm the one who has been benefiting from her hard work. She's the reason I've been successful. She's the one who has made sacrifices, who has supported me from the very beginning. Mark's parents looked at him in disbelief. They had always assumed that Lisa was taking advantage of their son, but now they were hearing something completely different. Mark continued, his voice full of emotion. Remember my first job? Lisa was the one who encouraged me, who helped me prepare for it. She's the one who sent me money to start our business. She's the one who has been working tirelessly, even from Canada, to make sure we succeed. If there is any gold digger here, it's me, because I've been living off her efforts. As Mark spoke, his parents' face softened. The anger that had filled their hearts began to melt away, replaced by shame and regret. They had misjudged Lisa, and now they realized the truth. The luxury they had been enjoying, the success they had been so proud of, it was all thanks to Lisa. Mark's parents lowered their heads, unable to meet their son's eyes. They felt a deep sense of guilt for the way they had treated Lisa, for the harsh words they had spoken to her. Where is Lisa? Mark's mother asked, her voice trembling with remorse. We need to apologize to her. Lisa, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, stepped forward. Mark's parents looked at her, their faces filled with regret. We are so sorry, Lisa, Mark's father said, his voice breaking. We were wrong about you. Can you ever forgive us? Without hesitation, Lisa smiled and nodded. Of course, I forgive you. Family is everything to me, and I'm just happy that we can all be together now. Mark's parents were touched by her kindness. They hadn't expected her to forgive them so easily, but Lisa's heart was full of love, not hate. She knew that holding on to anger would only hurt them all. They spent the rest of the day together, celebrating their newfound understanding and love for each other. There were laughter, there were tears, but most importantly, there were a sense of unity. The past was behind them, and they were ready to move forward as a family. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The time passed quickly as they settled back into their lives. Mark and Lisa grew even closer, their love deepening with each passing day. They knew they could face anything as long as they had each other. Then one day, the moment they had been waiting for finally arrived. Lisa went into labor, and after a few hours of anxious waiting, she gave birth to a beautiful set of twin boys. The joy and celebration that filled the air were indescribable. Mark could hardly contain his excitement as he held his sons for the first time. Tears of happiness streamed down Lisa's face as she looked at her husband and their two little boys. This was everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. Mark was overwhelmed with gratitude, knowing how lucky he was to have such a wonderful family. Mark's parents were overjoyed as well. They were proud grandparents now, and all the tension from before had disappeared. They showered the twins with love and affection, and the family was closer than ever. As Mark and Lisa looked at each other, they knew they had made it through the toughest of times. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but they had come out stronger on the other side. They were grateful for every moment, for every blessings, and most of all, for each other. They lived happily ever after, their home filled with love, laughter, and the joyful sounds of their children. And as the days turned into years, their love only grew stronger, proving that true love can conquer all. The story ends here, but the love story of Mark and Lisa will live on in their hearts forever. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now, and may your dreams be filled with joy, wonder, and endless possibilities. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.